is her position on a number of issues indicates to me that she has the real potential to be an activist judge, not faithful to the law. For that reason, I will vote no. I would note the absence of a quorum. Excuse me, Mr. President.
The senator from Arkansas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would agree with the senator from Alabama. It's so important that we get good judges nominated and confirmed, and that's why I rise today in support of Susan Hickey's nomination as United States District Judge for the Western District of Arkansas. Judge Hickey's distinguished career reflects her pursuit to serve the interest of justice. As an attorney and now as a circuit judge in my home state of Arkansas, she has earned the respect of the Arkansas legal community and proven she is devoted to fulfilling this important role in our judicial system. I am confident that Judge Hickey's extensive experience with the legal system will serve her well on the federal bench. Her confirmation will fill the seat of retired Judge Harry Barnes, whom she clerked for before her appointment as Circuit Judge of the 13th Judicial District. She also worked in a private law firm following her graduation from the University of Arkansas School of Law, and also served as an in-house counsel for Murphy Oil. Judge Hickey has strong bipartisan support for a good reason. She has established herself as a dedicated public servant who possesses a strong work ethic and commitment to a fair and impartial legal system. Her experience, her impartial demeanor, and reputation amongst her peers give me faith that Judge Hickey will do a great job as the U.S. District Judge for the Western District of Arkansas. When she was nominated for this position, Arkansans from all across the state expressed their support for her confirmation. I am honored to recommend that the Senate confirm Judge Susan Hickey as the United States District Judge for the Western District of Arkansas. I am confident that her experience and judicial temperament make her the right person to serve Arkansas as a district judge. With that, I yield back, Mr. President.
Mr. President, the senator from Arkansas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank my colleague for being here today and expressing his support for Susan Hickey to be a new federal district court judge in the Western District of Arkansas. She has a strong record in our state. She's exactly what we need in a federal judge, and the fact that you have both home state senators, one Democrat, one Republican, supportive of the nomination just begins to speak volumes about the kind of person and the kind of reputation that Susan Hickey has. She's been in both the public sector and the private sector. She's worked in-house with an oil company, as Senator Bozeman said, but she's also law clerk for a very, very solid and well-respected federal judge. She's now a state court judge in Arkansas at the state trial court level, and she's handled 313 felony criminal cases since she's been on the bench. She just brings a lot of experience, and she's exactly the kind of person we need to be on the federal bench. I would say that when I look at a judge candidate, a judge nominee, I always have three set of criteria. One is, are they qualified? Certainly she is. She brings very, very strong qualifications and experience to this position. Second, can she be fair and impartial? And I think that is something that comes up with Susan Hickey over and over and over from her local bar down in South Arkansas, from the people in the community, the folks that have dealt with her. They all say that she's an extremely fair person, and they have no doubt that she will be impartial as she puts on that federal district court robe. And then, does she have the proper judicial temperament, is my third criteria. And that obviously is subjective because judges, that comes down to their personality and their style. But you want a federal judge who has great demeanor, who is very good with the law, but also very good with lawyers, because obviously in a trial court you have a lot of type A personalities in the court, and you have to give the proper appearance to the jury, and that's critically important for a district court judge. So I'd say absolutely yes, she has the right judicial temperament. So I would strongly encourage all of my colleagues to vote favorably for Susan Hickey. Like I said, she's handled 1,690 total matters in the federal court since she's been a law clerk there. 313 total felony cases have been disposed of in her trial court in South Arkansas down in El Dorado. She has a lot of very, very solid legal experience, and the bottom line is she's just a good person, and people like her and respect her and they trust her. And I think when our founding fathers put together the federal judiciary, this is the kind of person they wanted. She reflects the values and the attitudes of that part of the state. She's smart, she's hardworking, she's going to be fair, and really we couldn't ask a whole lot more for any federal judge in any district, and certainly she's going to do a great job down there. So I'm proud to be joined by my friend and colleague from Arkansas to support this nomination. If we support her and if we confirm her today, we will be joining thousands and thousands of people in South Arkansas who've supported her, and we've had hundreds, I know, express support for her into my office, and I'm certain Senator Bozeman has had many, many support her in his office as well. So, Mr. President, with that, I would encourage my colleagues to give her very strong consideration. She has been rated unanimously qualified by the American Bar Association. There again, I think that the fact that both home state senators support her, the American Bar Association supports her, the Arkansas Bar, not the association because they don't do those type of endorsements, but every lawyer I've talked to that knows Susan Hickey thinks she will do an outstanding job. So, Mr. President, with that, I'd like to ask my colleagues to vote for her and appreciate your consideration on that. And with that, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President. Mr. President.
The Senator from New York.
I ask unanimous consent the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I rise to speak today in support of two excellent nominees for the bench from the Southern District of New York. These two women, Alison Nathan and Katherine Forrest, have different backgrounds, but each in her own way represents the best that the New York Bar has to offer. Katherine Forrest is a young lawyer, but extraordinarily accomplished lawyer, whose practice has been particularly well suited to the needs of litigants in the Southern District. She was born in New York City, received her B.A. from Wesleyan University, and her law degree from NYU Law School, one of the best in the country. She has spent the majority of her career in private practice at the prestigious top-line firm of Cravath, Swaine & Moore, where she was on the national A-list of practitioners. She was named one of the American Lawyer's top 50 litigators under 45. She currently serves as the Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Antitrust Division of the Department of Justice, where I know she is very well regarded and has served with great distinction. I look forward to Ms. Forrest's transition from one position of service to our country to the other. I also rise in support of Alison Nathan, and I would like to counter some of the arguments that have been made against her on the floor here today. First, Alison Nathan has tremendous legal experience, albeit that she is young. She is a gifted young lawyer who New Yorkers would be fortunate to have on the bench, hopefully for a long time. While she's a native of Philadelphia, she has called New York City her home for some time. She graduated at the top of her class from both Cornell University and Cornell Law School, where she was editor-in-chief of the Cornell Law Review. She worked as a litigator for 4 years at the preeminent firm of Wilmer Hale and has also served in 2 of the 3 branches of government. Ms. Nathan clerked for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals Judge Betty Fletcher and then for Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens. Recently, she served with distinction as a special assistant to President Obama and an associate White House counsel. She is currently special counsel to the Solicitor General of New York. Now that is a world of experience. It is hard to find better experience from somebody being nominated to the bench. Some of my colleagues have said, well, her rating from the ABA wasn't as good because, and that was based on experience, that's what the ABA does. They claim, these colleagues, that Ms. Nathan lacks the experience to be confirmed as a judge because only a majority of the ABA rated her qualified while a minority rated her not qualified. However, Ms. Nathan has the same qualification ratings as Bush administration judges that this body confirmed. Specifically, the Senate confirmed 33 of President Bush's nominees with ratings equal to Ms. Nathan, including Mark Fuller and Keith Watkins of Alabama, Virginia Hopkins of the Northern District of Alabama, Paul Cassell of Utah, Frederick Martin of Arizona, David Burry of Arizona. Mr. President, are we going to have a different standard for Allie Nathan than for other judges? I sure hope not. And then some have brought up only recently, actually very recently, the thought that Ms. Nathan would apply foreign law to our own laws. That is patently false to say that Ms. Nathan has suggested or that she believes it is appropriate for U.S. judges to rely on foreign law, or that she herself would ever consider doing so. To the contrary, she said explicitly in response to written questions from Senator Grassley, quote, "If I were confirmed as the United States District Court judge, foreign law would have no relevance to my interpretation of the U.S. Constitution." Let's go through that quote again. This is in reference to a question from Senator Grassley. Quote, "If I were confirmed as United States District Court judge, foreign law would have no relevance, my emphasis, to my interpretation of the U.S. Constitution." My colleagues are also wrong in their suggestion that Ms. Nathan has in the past either relied on foreign law herself or suggested that courts should do so. In the Bays versus Rees case, she merely described the fact that others, including a law school clinic, and Human Rights Watch had argued in their own briefs that international law could be considered when dealing with questions of pain and suffering. Similarly, in her analysis of the Roper case, Ms. Nathan made an observation about what the Supreme Court had done, specifically that the Supreme Court had cited foreign law as non-dispositive support for their conclusion about the national consensus in the U.S. about the death penalty. That my colleagues have jumped from these two instances in which Ms. Nathan described other people's opinions to conclusions about Ms. Nathan's own belief leads me to ask, are judicial candidates not allowed to describe the arguments that others have made? That would be rather absurd, and I can't imagine it's the outcome my colleagues would want, but it is the one their arguments naturally lead to. Finally, on national security, where again some from the outside who have criticized Ms. Nathan have brought up national security, here is what she has said. I think it is important for a federal district judge to follow the Supreme Court. It's important to our national security for there to be judges who follow the law in this area, national security, to the extent questions come before them and that Congress act as it has in this area, unquote. That is good reason that she is supported by all the law clerks she served with, including those of Justices Thomas, Scalia, Kennedy, and O'Connor. And they obviously, those justices, are not justices that agreed with some of the other justices on the court, but their law clerks uniformly supported Allie Nathan. So I would urge my colleagues to support Allie Nathan. She will be an outstanding addition to the bench in the Southern District of New York, as well as Katherine Forrest, who will also be an outstanding addition. With that, I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
President, I ask for the ayes and nays.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. Question is on the Nathan nomination. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka, Mr. Alexander, Ms. Ayotte, Mr. Barrasso. No. Mr. Baucus, Mr. Begich, Mr. Bennett. Got it. Mr. Bingaman, Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Blunt, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Boxer, Mr. Brown of Massachusetts, Mr. Brown of Ohio, Mr. Burr, Ms. Cantwell, Mr. Cardin, Mr. Carper, Mr. Casey, Mr. Chambliss, Mr. Coates, gotcha. Mr. Coates, Mr. Coburn, Mr. Cochran, Ms. Collins, Mr. Conrad, Mr. Coons, Mr. Corker, Mr. Cornyn, Mr. Crapo, Mr. Dement, Mr. Durbin, Mr. Enzi, Mrs. Feinstein, Mr. Franken, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mrs. Hagan, Mr. Harkin, Mr. Hatch, Mr. Heller, Mr. Hoven, Mrs. Hutchison, Mr. Inhofe, Mr. Inoue, Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Johans, Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, Mr. Carey, Mr. Kirk, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Cole, Mr. Kyle, Ms. Landrieu, Mr. Lautenberg, Mr. Leahy, Mr. Lee, Mr. Levin, Mr. Lieberman, Mr. Lugar, Mr. Manchin, Mr. McCain, Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski, Mr. Moran, Ms. Murkowski, Mrs. Murray. Mr. Nelson of Nebraska. Mr. Nelson of Florida. Mr. Paul. Mr. Portman. Mr. Pryor. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island. Mr. Reed of Nevada. Mr. Risch. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Rockefeller. Mr. Rubio. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Sessions. Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Shelby. Ms. Snow. Ms. Stabenow. Mr. Tester. Mr. Thune. Mr. Toomey. Mr. Udall of Colorado. Mr. Udall of New Mexico. Mr. Vitter. Mr. Warner. Mr. Webb. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative: Boxer, Carper, Durbin, Leahy, Pryor, Reed of Nevada, Sanders, Schumer, Shaheen, and Tester. Senators voting in the negative: Barrasso, Blunt, Chambliss, Cornyn, Isaacson, Kyle, Roberts, Sessions, and Thune. Mr. Akaka. Mr. Akaka, aye. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wicker, no. Mr. Brown of Massachusetts, no. Mr. Enzi. Mr. Enzi, no. Mr. Shelby. Mr. Shelby, no. Mr. Casey. Mr. Casey, aye. Mr. Toomey. Mr. Toomey, no. Mr. Merkley. Mr. Merkley, aye. Mrs. Gillibrand, aye. Mr. Moran. No. Mr. Moran, no. Mr. Cochran. Mr. Cochran, no. Mr. Rubio. Mr. Rubio, no. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blumenthal, aye. Mr. Begich. Mr. Begich, aye. Mr. Inhofe. Mr. Inhofe, no. Mr. Alexander. Mr. Alexander. No. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Crapo. No. Mr. Bozeman. Mr. Bozeman. No. Mr. McCain. Mr. McCain, no. Mr. Lautenberg. Mr. Lautenberg, aye. Mr. Nelson. Mr. Nelson of Nebraska, aye. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Grassley, no. Mr. Corker. Mr. Corker, no. Mr. Kirk. Mr. Kirk, no. Mrs. Murray. Mrs. Murray, aye. Mr. Carey. Mr. Carey, aye. Mr. Inouye. Mr. Inouye, aye. Ms. Klobuchar. Ms. Klobuchar, aye. Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown of Ohio, aye. Ms. Collins. Ms. Collins, no. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse, aye. Mr. Udall. Mr. Udall of New Mexico, aye. Mr. Paul. Mr. Paul, no. Mr. McConnell. Mr. McConnell, no. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Hoven, no. Ms. Snow. Ms. Snow, no. Mrs. Hutchison. Mrs. Hutchison, no. Mr. Coates.
No.
Mr. Coates, no. Mr. Lee.
No.
Mr. Lee, no. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, no. Mr. Portman. Mr. Portman, no. Mr. Heller. Mr. Heller, no. Mr. Burr. Mr. Burr, no. Mr. Nelson.
Nelson, aye.
Mr. Nelson of Florida, aye. Mr. Baucus. Mr. Baucus, aye. Ms. Cantwell. Ms. Cantwell, aye. Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, aye. Ms. Ayotte. Ms. Ayotte, no. Mr. Menendez. Mr. Menendez, aye. Mr. Wyden. Mr. Wyden, aye. Mr. Bennett, aye. Mr. Dement. Mr. Dement, no. Mr. Coons. Mr. Coons, aye. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Conrad, aye. Mr. Webb. Mr. Webb, aye. Mr. Risch. Mr. Risch, no. Mr. Graham. Mr. Graham, no. Mr. Bingaman. Mr. Bingaman, aye. Mr. Levin. Mr. Levin, aye. Ms. Mikulski. Ms. Mikulski, aye. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warner, aye. Mr. Hatch. Mr. Hatch, no. Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, aye. Mr. Cole, aye. Hands. Mr. Johans, no. Ms. Murkowski, no. Mr. Cardin, aye. Mrs. McCaskill, aye. Mr. Franken. Mr. Franken, aye. Ms. Landrieu. Ms. Landrieu, aye. Mr. Udall of Colorado, aye. Mr. Rockefeller. Mr. Rockefeller, aye. Mrs. Feinstein. Mrs. Feinstein, aye.
Everybody, if you take reading.
On this vote, the yeas are 48, the nays are 44, and the nomination is confirmed. The question is now on the Hickey nomination.
Do you want the yeas and nays?
Senator from Vermont,
Yeas and nays.
is there a sufficient second? Is there a sufficient second? There is. Appears to be. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander. Ms. Ayotte. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Baucus. Mr. Beckidge. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bingaman. Mr. Blumenthal. Yes, I did. Mr. Blunt. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Boxer. Mr. Brown in Massachusetts. Mr. Brown of Ohio. Mr. Byrd. Ms. Cantwell. Mr. Cardin. Mr. Carper. Mr. Casey. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Coates. Mr. Coburn. Mr. Cochran. Ms. Collins. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Coons. Mr. Corker. Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Dement. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Enzi. Mrs. Feinstein, Mr. Franken, Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mrs. Hagan. Mr. Harkin, Mr. Hatch. Mr. Heller, Mr. Hoven, Mrs. Hutcherson.
During the day on Thursday, all the press, and my mom's stuck in a prison. What now?
Mr. Inhofe.
I think he was angry on the phone.
Mr. No Way.
So they could take care of him.
Mr. Isaacson. Mr. Johans. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin. Mr. Johnson of South Dakota. Mr. Carey. Mr. Kirk. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Cole. Mr. Kyle. Ms. Landrieu. Mr. Lautenberg. Mr. Leahy. Mr. Lee. Mr. Levin. Mr. Lieberman. Mr. Lugar. Mr. Manchin. Mr. McCain. Mrs. McCaskill. Mr. McConnell. Yes, sir, I just did. Mr. Menendez. Mr. Merkley. Ms. Mikulski. Mr. Moran. Ms. Murkowski. Mrs. Murray. Mr. Nelson, Nebraska. Mr. Nelson of Florida. Mr. Paul. Mr. Portman. Mr. Pryor. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island. Mr. Reed of Nevada. Mr. Risch. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Rockefeller. Mr. Rubio. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Sessions. Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Shelby. Ms. Snow. Ms. Stabenow. Mr. Tester. Mr. Thune. Mr. Toomey. Mr. Udall of Colorado. Mr. Udall of New Mexico. Mr. Vitter. Mr. Warner. Mr. Webb. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative. Mr. McCain. Senators voting in the affirmative. Akaka, Alexander, Ayotte, Barrasso, Baucus, Bekich, Bennett, Bingaman, Blumenthal, Blunt, Bozeman, Brown of Massachusetts, Brown of Ohio, Cantwell, Cardin, Carper, Casey, Chambliss, Coates, Cochran, Collins, Conrad, Coons, Corker, Cornyn, Crapo, Durbin, Feinstein, Franken, Gillibrand, Graham, Hatch, Heller, Hoban, Hutcherson, Inhofe, Inouye, Isaacson, Johans, Johnson of Wisconsin, Johnson of South Dakota, Kerry, Kirk, Klobuchar, Cole, Landrieu, Lautenberg, Leahy, Levin, McCaskill, McConnell, Menendez, Merkley, Mikulski, Moran, Murkowski, Murray, Nelson of Nebraska, Nelson of Florida, Portman, Pryor, Reed of Rhode Island, Reed of Nevada, Risch, Roberts, Rockefeller, Rubio, Sanders, Schumer, Sessions, Shaheen, Snow, Tester, Thune, Toomey, Udall of Colorado, Udall of New Mexico, Warner, Webb, Whitehouse, Wicker, and Wyden. Senators voting in the negative. Burr, DeMint, Grassley, Kyle, Lee, McCain, Paul, and Shelby. Mr. Enzi, aye.